Hey everybody, welcome back to Millennial Homesteading. I know I haven't done a video in a while, so I figured this would be a good time to put one out. Today we're going to talk about sandblasting and some of the dangers and some of the benefits of sandblasting versus sanding or using a wire wheel. So here before us we have a sandblast cabinet. This is a standing sandblast cabinet. They also have benchtop sandblast cabinets, which is about half of this size. You've probably seen them at Harbor Freight. Harbor Freight has both standing and benchtop. You also have the little portables. They're normally about 50 to 80 pounds of. It's a little hopper with a gun to it. You hook an air line to it, and it uses suction to suck the sand up and the air pressure to blast it across whatever you're trying to get the pane or scale or whatever you're off of. So in here, we have our sandblasting gun. This is our air line here. This is where the sand comes up into here. It's basically a siphon effect, so as high speed air comes across here, it creates a vacuum down here, which forces this media, which is the correct term for it, media, because this is not technically sand, media to come up through a little orifice, same way a carburetor works, and shoot out with the air at high speed. Depending on your pressure, we're at about 90 psi, depending on whatever your speed is for the air, because pressure and speed doesn't always match up. But this is the basic setups of a cabinet. Here we have a fresh air vent inlet. Over here we have a outlet, which this one has its own fan. Then we have our gloves, because you definitely don't want to be sandblasting your hands during this. This stuff will remove skin faster than it's even funny. So we have our gloves, which are either secured or sealed into the outer housing of the blast cabinet. This is a pressure switch, so when the door is up, I shouldn't have any pressure going to my gun, but this isn't standard equipment on everyone. And we have some sort of lighting, that way when we close this, we can see through our viewport right here what we're working on. This happens to be, if you know what this is, you can comment below, but I don't know if anybody from my age is going to know what this is, because nobody likes this old school stuff. But in a sandblast cabinet, we also have a grate underneath, and this is where your media will fall through. You can kind of see it here, how it just kind of, yeah, see, it's just going to fall right back down there. And it's funneled down to a little funnel there, and it's sucked back up from a tube. But today we're going to talk about some of the dangers of sandblasting. For those of you who don't know, when you have sandblasting, you're not just having high-speed media flying out at whatever you're trying to remove. You also have static electricity, which can discharge and really hurt you. You also have your glass here, which I have seen, if the vacuum inside here gets so bad, which on professional series it can, that will actually shatter. I know a guy that had his glass shatter on him, and he came down and cut his hand right here. It was pretty messy. But that's on rare occasions. He was using way too big of a system for what he had, and he wasn't taking care of his blast cabinet because his hose was clogged up going out, because he had a hose out here that would lead out to the outside. But that's a story for another day. So when we have a sandblast cabinet, normally we'll have ports here and here or wherever. Normally you'll have a cross flow, so the air flows this way on this one, to remove all of that dust and stuff inside the cabinet, because when you're blasting, you really can't see much. And over time, your glass will get clouded like that one will, and you'll have to replace it. But normally to combat that dust, we have a vacuum hooked up to it, and you kind of can't see it, but we'll have a vacuum hooked up to it, and we can hook it up straight there. But the problem with that is that very shortly, especially if you're using a fine material like soda blasting, that filter is going to get clogged up, and you're not going to get anything out of it. Within 5 minutes, you're basically back to nothing. So we use what's known as a cyclonic separator, which is what this is. This is a cyclonic separator. So we have our vacuum pulls air from the center of the bucket this way, straight up. And we have a tube that comes down and into our cyclonic separator. When it gets in there, it spins very fast, and that inertia separates the particles or the media from the air up against the side and comes down and fills the bucket. Now here's the problem with that. When you have airflow, just airflow, moving, air creates static electricity. Not a lot normally. However, at high speeds, static electricity can build up. And air actually is a resistor to electricity. It's not supposed to flow through it. All right? It actually acts kind of like the rubber casing on a wire sometimes. where the electricity won't flow through it. However, if the voltage gets high enough, the electricity can overcome that air gap and arc to you. That's what happens, what's called a static discharge. And when you're sandblasting, if I'm sandblasting PVC, the static electricity on that can be very high. So it's very important to have your cabinet grounded, your separator grounded, and your vacuum grounded. Now, this is going to have media in it when it comes into the cyclonic discharge, or the cyclonic separator. So that is going to amplify the amount of static electricity that is created. So if you see that little tiny red wire there, I have bolts that pop through here. That is grounded to my cabinet, which is grounded earth. So static electricity cannot build up. There's been stories, I don't know if you've heard of them, where somebody will be sandblasting a piece of PVC which is completely insulated. He'll take his glove off and touch the PVC to feel the finish, and the PVC will discharge through him. It only takes about a half a volt to disrupt the rhythm of the human heart or kill you. It'll actually send you into cardiac arrest if it doesn't flat out just kill you. That's a rare occasion though. Normally we can handle a little higher than that. Half an amp, that's all that it takes. But when static electricity discharges, normally high voltage, low amperage. You have like a couple of milliamps, but you may have 10,000 volts. The volts is what allows that to jump that air current. 20,000 volts. Let me tell you like this: your standard car system nowadays is about 50,000 volts, which will jump at 50 thousandths air gap. That's not a lot of distance. However, 50,000 volts, when it hits you, if you've ever been shot by an ignition system, it hurts. It's a pretty big hit, and it hurts a lot. The old days, like in the old cars, that was originally a 30,000 system with points and condenser and all that stuff, but now it's upgraded to HEI, which is high energy ignition, 50,000 volts. So you have 10,000 volts, jumping across you. It's going to sting. If you've ever had a woolly blanket on in the wintertime and you stood up real quick with a sweater, you notice that everything is popping inside. That's because of static electricity. You may have 5,000 or 6,000 volts in that blanket. Almost no amps, but 5,000 or 6,000 volts. It's trying to get to ground. Everything is trying to get equal in Earth. So you have one voltage that's higher than the other one. It's going to want to level out. That's the way of the world. That's the way it is with pressure systems. That's the way it is with electrical systems. That's the way it is with air systems. Everything wants to get equal. And that's all it's trying to do. That's what a static discharge is when the voltage gets high enough, it jumps to the closest ground that it can, the path of least resistance. So when we sandblast, we need to have a cyclonic separator or some kind of separator system, one, to protect our vacuum, because our vacuum will get clogged up pretty quick. And this is just a cheap one, but it works great. Then we have our cyclonic separator or separator system that is going to save our media, and it's also going to make sure that we can see again. So as we go in here, air flows this way very rapidly that way and takes all that dust with it. Goes down, separator, air goes up, media goes down, and then when this gets full, I just dump it back in here because it's still good media. But when we're sandblasting, it's take your time with it. Do like a paint, start somewhere and just paint slowly. Or repaint, or take it off slowly. So take your time with it, have fun. Don't be afraid to try stuff like this. Sandblasting is actually really fun. I really enjoy it. But if you guys have any questions or anything, hopefully this was some kind of help with you. I don't know how many of you out there sandblast, but if you do into car mods and restroom mods and stuff like that, like I do, it's a pretty big part of it. I've sandblasted headers, intake manifolds, pretty much anything that isn't a main internal component of an engine, and pretty much every external component of an engine. But hopefully all's going well. Catch y'all later.